So thanks everyone for joining us. Let's get this webinar going. We've got what promises to be a real cracker in store this evening. Um, I'll just commence by acknowledging this brilliant country in which we all reside. And I especially want to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the various lands in which we're located this evening. And in a special mention to the lands in which we run our Coast To Kosci race, those of the Ewan and the Ngarigo people. And then I just pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging, and to celebrate the diversity of Aboriginal peoples and their ongoing cultures and connections to the lands, to the mountains, and to the waters of Australia. Over to you, Greg.
Fantastic. Thanks, Mickey. And again, thank you everybody for joining us tonight. Really pleased to see such a large turnout. Our preference is that wherever possible to help provide education, insights, and perspective so that the runners, your support crews, and everybody have a greater understanding of the race, and with that, hopefully a better experience and less challenges. Just a couple of updates before we dive in to, I suppose, our panel session. I had said previously there were roadworks occurring on Big Jack Mountain Road around sort of Perico, new buildings, that sort of area. We've had confirmation from council that they have been completed, which is great, which means should be no vehicle restrictions for us, which is good. Also, in your registration packs this year, we'll also include a insert sheet which will give instructions on the signage for your vehicle and where to put it and how to put it. That's often a challenge and gives crews a lot of debate the first hour or two, working out how to affix their signs that Transport for New South Wales mandate that we fix to respective vehicles. Tonight is about providing some perspectives for support crew. Coast To Kosciuszko is a little bit different from most other events, where in most other events you'll have a checkpoint every 10k, 25k, and you'll rendezvous with support crew there. Coast To Kosci, once you are past the Toowoomba checkpoint at around sort of 23, 24 kilometres, your support crew is with the runner for the whole route. Okay. That means the support crew plays a really important role. They are effectively our eyes and ears in the field in looking after your runner. You're not just there to support crews are not just there to keep the runner company. They're there to feed them, fuel them, look after them, keep a watchful eye on them, apply basic first aid if needed, but really take care of their runners. And it's so important. The support crews have a very important role. With that, we encourage runners to get experienced support crew. While you want to have fun, and we certainly want you to have fun, we want you to make sure you do that safe and your runner has the absolute best chance of finishing. And to do that, you want a really good support crew who can cover all sorts of circumstances. So the support crew are really, really important. So choose wisely. Tonight, we've got two experienced support crew members to act as a panel for us and provide their perspectives. Firstly, Amanda Pilley. Really grateful that Amanda's able to join us this evening, and hopefully young Hugo is in bed and giving you a break, or Matt is certainly looking after young Hugo. Amanda has crewed a couple of times for Matt at Coast To Kosciuszko, but has also crewed at a number of other larger events as well, another number of ultras as well. And I've seen Amanda in action. She runs a tight ship, and she gets the whip cracking. And I mean it with all love and affection, Amanda. Tough lady. Also, we have Greg Thomson joining us. Greg is able to bring a unique perspective to this webinar. So probably perhaps in descending order, Greg's a 3-time finisher of Coast To Kosciuszko. He has been a medic for Coast To Kosciuszko a couple of times as well. He's also crewed the indomitable Jane Trumper as well. And this year he's also acting as a support crew member for Adrian Watmore. So Greg's able to bring a really well-rounded perspective to this webinar, and Amanda similarly is able to bring a really good perspective as well. So we welcome and thank both Greg and Amanda for their perspectives tonight. Mickey, I'll get you to lead us off.
Great. Thanks, Greg. I'll start this kind of round of questions off with hopefully Amanda responding first. And Amanda, what are the essential ingredients of being a top-notch support crew?
Thanks guys for having me on tonight. Very much a privilege, so I appreciate it. Hugo is in the room with us, so hopefully, fingers crossed, he stays asleep. If you hear crying in the background, that's just him or Matt because I yell at him often too. Um, so I think that I think a lot of stuff is essential in regards to, especially for this race, in particular. A lot of the time, Greg you mentioned before, like you can kind of wing it through some ultras because you're just going from checkpoint to checkpoint. But this is actually a really full-on race. Like you get this nice little freedom to Toowoomba where you get to chill and relax, and then from then on, it's on. So I think some of the important stuff is like obviously the essentials like flexibility. You need to be able to bend over backwards and pull rabbits out of hats for this race. Being really reliable, keeping to your word, making sure you keep and stick to plans if that's something that you're working with. Decision making and being able to do that really quickly on the fly. As the race progresses, the runner's going to have less of an ability to be able to actually make decisions for themselves. So you kind of need to be doing that for them. And also inside of that is like problem solving because one of the good things about this race is that you are going through really, really small communities, which are beautiful. However, really, really small communities don't have the luxury of a service station just down the road or a Woolies or a Coles. So when something comes up, you need to be able to solve that pretty quickly to be able to keep your runner moving forward.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Amanda. Great perspective. And Tomo, over to you. What's the most essential ingredients of being a top-notch support crew?
I reckon, absolutely. I agree with Amanda 100% on all of those comments. I think that the best, support crew first of all, they're open with their communication, and I think we've heard this before on previous webinars in terms of you might not always know your support crew. There might be just learning, who they are on the race week, and that's a great thing, meeting new people. But I think it's really important to go in with a very open and honest communication style. If you're clear with your communication, if you're accepting and listening of others' needs at any given time, I think that will keep you in good stead. I think being organised in the back of the car is probably one of the most important parts. If you have, as you know, these races can go on for a number of days, and the organisation of the car can, go pear-shaped very quickly. So a little bit of planning ahead of time will keep you in good stead. And I think, as Amanda touched on, being adaptable to any given situation is probably a really important element. Things can change quite dramatically and quite quickly, especially, with runners, going through different phases of their race. So the adaptability of the crew is probably a really important quality. I think that would definitely, make you a top-notch support crew.
Thanks, Greg. Brilliant, mate.
And I know, Amanda, you touched on the importance of communication, and Greg echoed that as well. Besides communication from I suppose, your runner during the race, what do you need from your runner?
For during the race, or what do I need from my runner before the race?
Both.
Okay, so I think when I'm working with runners, I think there's two types of runners out there. One, extremely organized, labels everything, has a plan of absolutely everything by the minute. And then there's the runners that I tend to support, especially Matt, who's fast and loose and pretty much writes their plan out on a serviette the night before, but often spills beer on. So I think, I think at the end of the day, I think like before going into the race, having some kind of goal or knowing what your runner wants. Is that a particular time thereafter? Is that just about finishing the event? Like, what is it that they're actually aiming for? So that way then you can use that, and like maybe we'll talk about this later, but use that as a motivator for them as well. Because I think that in this event, mindset's going to break down before the body breaks down. It's one of those things that everyone's going to struggle at some point throughout this event. So I think being able to have that goal and being able to center yourself and the rest of the crew around that goal is really, really important. I also think, finding out, and especially Greg mentioned about it before, that, sometimes this is the first time a support crew is getting together, but finding out what ticks for your runner is really important beforehand, because you're going to be calling on that throughout. In regards to communication within our team, we kind of for us, it's about keeping Matt running and not trying to get him to stop too often or too much. And that might not be what other people are planning on doing. So our communication is very much about, him letting us know as much as he can when we see him at a meeting point. And then we will do whatever he needs at that next meeting point. So we're planning for the next meeting point. We're not going, oh, you want to change your shoes here? Well, we'll go and get your shoes out of our bags and then take them over. Like, no, that's what's going to happen at the next point. So having those kind of guides for the runner up front is, I think, really important as well. When the pacers come in, that's the job of the pacer. Because once the pacers start to come in, that's when that whole memory is starting to fade. And so, the runners won't be able to remember stuff that they actually want or wanted from you. And so getting the pacers to kind of remember that and feed that back. So kind of using that open communication through the whole team and being quite open and honest about how the runner's going as well, I think is important too.
Thanks, Amanda. Thank you. And Greg, your perspective.
I think what's really important for a crew is being focused and really focused on the task and be present with your runner. You might not be able to understand exactly what they're going through at any given time, but certainly getting to know your runner on the day and following that journey with them gives you a really good basis for what they might need later on. And I think you might not know your runner as well as, your partner, but you can learn. You can learn on the job as you go. And it's a long day, it's a long night, and it's another long day as well for a lot of runners and crew. So I think being adaptable, being able to, bite off little chunks of the pie at a time, for not only the runner, but also for the crew. And I think, be kind to yourselves, you've got a journey as well, and you've got a lot of work to do, and it's sometimes a lot easier to run the race than what it is to cruise. So, just being kind to yourselves is really important as well.
Thanks, Greg.
Hey, Amanda, I can hear your psychologist background coming through and all those words of wisdom there. The brain breaks down before the body breaks down. Hey, magic.
It will. It really will.
So just on that point then, and I'll ask Tomo this first. What do you think has been the most challenging aspect of supporting a runner, and how do you handle it?
Look, there's so many challenges, aren't there? Your runner goes through, the highs of highs and the lows of lows, and you have to be not only that physical support, the practical support, the psychological support, the emotional support. So understanding, as I said earlier, where your runner is at any given time will help you, know what they need and what support to give. Now, you're not always going to know exactly what to say or what to do in any given situation, but I think, following that runner's process, being attentive, being present, would help. There's always going to be challenges. They're probably going to spit the dummy a few times. Being able to handle a bit of abuse is probably also a good quality to have as a support crew. But obviously, the equipment in the car during, challenging weather situations and if it's absolutely, stinking hot for the first half of the day and then pouring with rain, as we know, can happen down there at any given time. You've got to manage what's in your car and all those resources effectively. You don't want to be getting in and out of a car completely drenched and, covered in whatever. Because you need to be you need to be in the car for a long time. So managing all those, the equipment issues and all that gear, being organized, I think is one of the biggest challenges that you might face.
Great, Greg. Thanks for that. Amanda, your perspective, please.
Yeah, like I definitely agree that there's so many different challenges that come up. This is my third time back, and I've had one that was extremely wet and horrible, and we ran out of socks and we didn't know what we were going to do, and was literally like going to have to go via our accommodation at Jindy to be able to pick up dry socks from anyone else in the team, and then realized we can actually use the heater in the car to dry it. And so came back strong with fresh socks, that were nice and dry. And then last year was quite hot. So we had to start some really crazy, cooling techniques quite early on, by chucking ice down arm sleeves and in hats and things like that. So, I definitely agree with what Greg's saying, is like that adaptability. And, I think too, like in saying that as well, like I think there's always going to be something within this event. Like we're running, well, I'm not, but it's going for 240 kilometers. So something at some point is going to go not to plan. And it's about being able to adapt that plan or change that plan. The other thing I think in regards to like the challenges is if something's not working, maybe just give up on that and just go try something else. Like if the way in which you're trying to encourage someone doesn't seem like it's encouraging and helping them, switch it up and try something else. We had an issue where Matt decided that he wanted to change a pair of shoes at checkpoint. We knew that going into the checkpoint, we had to pay our shoes changed. We'd packed up at the checkpoint. As we're driving past him, we can see that something's not crash hot with him. He just doesn't look great. And so we decided to pull over earlier. We normally would go 5Ks in between each of the stops for Matt, and then 3Ks from Jindy onwards. But we decided to pull up early and just kind of go, what's going on? And he decided that he didn't like the shoes. And so we were like, sweet, when you run to the next 5K part, we're going to put on your old shoes. And so we were like, let's not keep going with these shoes that you don't like and just swap back to the ones that you originally liked. So I think that, just like that kind of stuff's really important. 100% agree with being able to handle abuse, is what Greg said. Like I really feel like you need tough skin when you're crewing. The runner's going to say something to you, and like it's hard sometimes not to take it personally. I've had some stuff said to me. I've heard other runners say some stuff. There has been an incident at UTA with a peanut butter sandwich being thrown towards my face. Stuff like that happens. They forget that really quickly. As crew, we can kind of hold on to that for a little bit longer. And so it's really important just to like let that stuff slide, and gives a really great story for the breakfast the following day. But yeah, I think that's really important, those.
Mark Avery actually sent a smiling face as you said the peanut butter sandwich. Was he the culprit?
No, he wasn't.
Yes. There's another story there. We'll do to that a different time. I'll throw it a slightly different question, but because I'm looking interested in separate perspectives. So, first one, Greg, you've seen this race from all angles, including as a medic. As a medic in past races, what's either a piece of advice to support crew or something you'd really recommend from a perspective as a race medic?
Yeah. So I think like we're all here because we've got a wealth and depth of experience with this sport. And I think that we should be able to rely on each other for that. In your crew, the crew that you've chosen has been chosen because they've got skills and attributes that you want there to support you during that run. So, support crew, can manage blisters. Support crew can manage chafing. Support crew can manage, a runner not feeling well and having a bit of a spew on the side. And support crew can manage, all those basics that come with the sport. From a medic's perspective, if your feet are falling off, between Dalgety and Jindabyne, which they may or may not be, depending on what the weather's doing, etc. And your crew aren't able to manage those, little blisters or little niggles or whatever, then by all means, seek some advice from the medics. if your leg falls off for whatever reason, that's obviously an advice-seeking situation. But rely on your crew as well and yourself as a runner, to use your intuition to know when, there's something, like that you can manage as a crew because you have a very capable and appropriate support crew that you've chosen at this point. So I think rely on them to, get you to the end. And if you need that little bit of extra help, by all means, ask a crew going past for some advice, or grab the race medic if it's getting serious. Um, I think we all should give ourselves a bit of credit. We're here, and we've got some skills and attributes that will contribute to getting that runner to the end. So back yourselves.
Thanks, Greg. Amanda, taking a slightly different perspective, and again, with some of your professional background as well, what's perhaps one piece of advice you would give to support crews from a mental preparation from their end?
Yeah, so like as I mentioned before, there is going to be, and like Greg's mentioned it too, there is going to be highs and lows, and they will pass, both of them, unfortunately, the highs too, and like that's important to kind of navigate. I'm a big believer in a bit of tough love, so maybe that's a bit of my background, having worked in jails and now worked within high schools. Kind of similar, unfortunately, in some aspects. But like they need to hear that. Like, no, like we just came back from the Melbourne Marathon. There was a lot of people that ran the 10, the half, and the marathon with minimal training, and they kind of bluffed their way through it. There's no one sitting here in this forum here has bluffed their way through to getting an entry into here. And so they need to believe in themselves in the dark moments, because they are going to pull through. They've done the training for this, but you need to remind them as crew of that. And that's where I think like having that goal, having that focus, using some kind of inspiration. So in the past, the first year, I actually surprised Matt and got friends and family to write little messages, just like little one sentence things, either a memory or a bit of like a boost or something that they, love about him or that was going to encourage him along, and would read them out when we met up at various points. And then last year, we actually lost our beloved dog shortly before the event, and it was would have been his 17th birthday on the event. So we used that as motivation. So whenever there was a tough spot, we kind of regathered. Last year, we were very much also on like Matt had to make the finish line, because that was part of our pregnancy announcement for our friends and family who didn't know at all that we were pregnant. And so like, I think having that and finding that within your team, and also for that runner to be able to hold them together through those tough times, and then kind of coming back to that. This is the reason why we're here. This is the reason why we're doing it. No one in life ever regrets doing something. They regret what they don't do. So, like there's always more you can push before someone's like, obviously if someone's physically unable to continue, that's very different, but mentally unable to continue, they can. They just don't want to. No one wants to when they get to that dark spot, especially when they hit Jindy and it's hard from there.
In with
Thank
you,
you.
Amanda, and just taking a little bit of a step back, because we're kind of talking about first aid and talking about the mental attitudes. What would you say are the top three most basic things you need to get right as a support crew?
So I actually think one of them is organization. Greg mentioned this before. So I don't let, like I wouldn't anyway, but I don't let Matt pack, or even when I've crewed other people, I don't actually let them pack the gear, especially not for this event. The runner doesn't actually need to know where something is in the car. Their job is to run. My job is to find the stuff that's in the car. So I need to know, and the rest of the crew need to know where everything is. So we use plastic tubs that are labeled based on certain things. So we have one for clothing and shoes, one for nutrition, like, so forth, one for medical, all of that kind of stuff. So we keep everything very contained. As Greg said before, it can very quickly, the car can go to absolute shit, and it can look messy, and things are everywhere. So you need to be able to try to get some kind of organization. Like I think that's really, really important. And that's like a bit away from the mental stuff. But if you're organized, then that allows you to then focus on those kind of areas, which I think is important as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Greg? What about the basics? What do you really need to get absolutely right as a support crew?
Yeah, I'd agree with Amanda. I think being organized is the number one key for success. Um, Last year as a runner, I had not been able to spend a lot of time with my crew prior to the run. I knew them very well, and I knew I could rely on them, but we hadn't rehearsed anything. We hadn't had any opportunity to do that. I brought down several different bags for several different scenarios. Those being wet, hot, cold, snow, whatever it was. And I gave them all to my crew, and I said, "You guys sort out where they go in the back of the car. I'm going to have a sleep." So they did that effectively, and there wasn't a glitch at all. It was all organized and taken care of. And as Amanda said, I was just able to run, and they were able to look after all that gear logistically. So it does come down for me to crew organization and being able to, talk to each other effectively and communicate effectively, because it is a long, long couple of days.
Yeah, thank you. And I think, yeah, I can echo those perspectives. I would pack the car, I'd pack the vehicle, have everything laid out, tubs, all those sorts of things. But that suited me for my organizational skills. It didn't suit Julie and Andrew and others, and they'd repack it to suit them based on how they operated and how they functioned, not how I functioned. They still had it all sorted. So I absolutely can see those perspectives. Um, Greg, how did you manage your runners? Nutrition, hydration needs, and how did you keep an eye on that? And what other things you've found useful in doing that?
Yeah. Look, I guess everyone's a little bit different. And I was lucky enough, as you mentioned earlier, to crew the formidable Jane Trumper on her ninth expedition down to Coast To Kosci. Um, and so she already sort of had most of her, capabilities down pat by then, I'd like to say. So I was lucky in terms of not having to worry too much about what she needed. Um, what I have found in the past is effective is that if you keep a log of what your runner's consuming and also what's coming out of them, and that might not be pretty at times, but certainly just keep a log of what's going in every hour, ensure that they're getting enough, nutrition trickling in. Everyone runner's going to be different, and everyone's needs are going to be different. So you need to have those conversations with your runner way before the race, have an idea about what their requirements are on a good day and what their requirements might be on a bad day. And certainly, listen to them and have a bit of a plan as to, try and keep their plan on track. From an output perspective, making sure that they're voiding and urinating at least, sometimes is probably a good thing. No output is bad, and too much output is also bad. So maybe just, get comfortable with talking about the discomfort of, bodily functions. If they're pulling
You're
over
trying to put it very diplomatically, Peggy.
I mean,
Outputs and voiding and Jesus.
well, I'm using my nurse vocabulary there. Um, but certainly, yeah, if they're not pissing and they're shitting too much or they're pissing too much, then you might have a problem. Um, but certainly, yeah, keep a log of what's going in and what's coming out, I think, and try and keep that as balanced as possible.
That's great. And Amanda, do you apply different approaches than perhaps what's Greg outlined, or have any different perspectives?
No, really similar. And I agree, like you need some kind of way to log and whatever that means it's going to work for you. We use a spreadsheet, like, you could use your phone, you could use a piece of paper, like whatever's the ways, because the problem is you're going to forget quite quickly when things happened. Like, you know, as the race goes on, you're going to be like, oh, when was the last time, you know, he went to the bathroom or she went to the bathroom, and, you know, what was going on. We always, so our, like, as I said before, especially at the start of the race, it's 5Ks. We always take the flask off our runner, Matt, when we come. So even if he's got half a flask left, we actually take it off him, because that means we're going to get him in trouble the next time we see him because he's not drinking enough. But it's our way of being able to monitor stuff. So sometimes, you know, they lie and they go, oh yeah, like I've nearly drank it all kind of thing, but I'm just going to hold on to it for the last bit. And then you realize, actually, no, they took like 2 sips. So it is about making sure that they're taking like little sips all the time. I also think in regards to like, I suppose this is more about the runner than the crew, but I always encourage Matt before and the lead up to events to be doing what I call bakery runs. So that's where he'll go out and run and try and consume different types of food and like more heavier foods than what sometimes one would consume on like some of those shorter distance runs. And that's just about training your stomach, because I think in events like this, you need to train your stomach just as much as you're training your legs and your mind. So that's really important. And I think variety is really important as well. So, you know, if your runner's showing up and they have one drink mix and like flavor and that's it, like I'd be like, oh my gosh, like you're not going to be able to drink this for the whole time. So you need as much variety as possible and to turn things out. And you as the crew need to know when they want to start on caffeinated stuff as well. Because if you start caffeinated stuff too early, that can be really bad and can lead to some of that discussion that Greg was talking about before about maybe too much of things happening. And you're not going to get that boost of that caffeine as well. So we've got some great stories as crew about some of the things that were said about not being able to give someone caffeine until a certain time mark and hiding as crew cans of Coke because we didn't want them to see Coke and things like that. But that's an important one, kind of sticking to that plan. If they're bonking early, then you need to try other stuff nutrition-wise and not get too early on caffeinated stuff, because it can lead to some not so pleasant times later in the race.
So, Amanda, I think that's a couple of things to take out of that from both of you, which is the log is not just about what they've had. It provides a pointer to what they've not had or what they've not done, and that therein tells the story rather than a record of how many calories they've consumed. It perhaps indicates how many they haven't consumed. Yeah. Thank you. Mickey.
Yeah, staying with you, Amanda. What was the most unexpected challenge you faced in any kind of event, and how did you adapt?
Interesting question. I think unexpected kind of challenges. Nothing really has come up that's been too major. I think the weather in the first one, I had an unexpected item in the car that came in really helpful, which was gum boots. So I actually used those gum boots to cross over a flooded water so that dry shoes remained dry and wet shoes just got a little bit wetter. So I think that, you know, a lot of that is about like, you know, just rolling with punches and being quite flexible. We also had not like an issue technically for us, but this event for me is so much about the community. Like I've made some really great friends. Matt's made some amazing friends. There's people that, you know, reach out to us all the time that I've literally only met like through being at Coast To Kosci. And so I think like, you know, one of the things that happened is that we had someone, we found out that someone had come down and had traveled quite a distance to be someone's pacer and was meeting up with them halfway through the event. And that runner, for whatever reason, and that's their choice, but decided that they didn't need that person anymore. And so as a team, Matt didn't know this at the time. He found out like when they just suddenly appeared and started running with him, but we felt actually really bad. Like we wanted them to be able to actually experience the event as well. So we actually included them in our cycle of paces that we use from Gindi onwards, so that they actually got to experience that. And then they got to do Charlotte Pass up to the top and back as well. So, you know, like that's like, you know, like it's an unusual one. It's kind of a crazy one, but like this event for me is really about that community connection. So I suppose in saying that too, like the flip side of that is, especially if you're a first timer too, like this event crewing or for a first time runner, reach out, because there's always like a crew around you somewhere most of the time, unless you're blitzing the field and you're completely out in front and you don't see anyone for the whole time. Most of the time you've got someone around, and people will help as long as it doesn't take away from the experience that they're giving and the support they're giving to their runner. They're going to do whatever possible to be able to help you and your runner as well. And I think that that's a lovely part about this community too.
Thanks, Amanda. Yeah, we do pride ourselves on the community side of the event. Greg, what's the most unexpected challenge you've faced when you have been a support crew, and how did you adapt?
So I've got a little story from last year when I was the runner, but I think it's relevant here. So top of Big Jack Mountain, middle of the day, relatively warm. Really pleased to get to the top of the hill at that point. I was walking up with one of my support crew. He was doing a wonderful job, muling for me, nice cold drinks, all that sort of stuff. Got to the top, the car's there, the crew's there, and there's a bit of a freak out going on. And I'm like, I don't care. Like, you guys sort it out. I don't even need to know what's going on. They're trying to get into the car. I'm like, what do you mean? What are you trying to do? They'd locked the keys in the car. And in a big panic, I was sitting there eating an ice block with thanks from another crew. And they're trying to get into the car. So I let them try a little bit longer, and just watched the shenanigans go on for a couple of minutes until I then relented and with a smile on my face said, "Don't worry, guys, there's a spare key in my bag in the back of the car there." So they were quite relieved. They weren't actually going to tell me that they had lost the key in the car. They were just going to send me on my way, but I could tell that there was obviously some concern going on. So yeah, a few unexpected moments like that as a support crew can really throw you. But again, you've just got to get back into it.
Book from earlier.
Maybe rely on your runner as well.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard of a car that actually broke. Well, we seem to get this every year, that a car breaks down, or like their battery runs dry and stuff like that. So yeah, and that's where the
Someone gets
community kicks
involved.
in. Yeah.
Won't go into that one. I suppose we've talked a lot about support crew, how they work with the runner. Okay. We've talked about some of the aspects of the skill sets of the relative support crew members, and I know there was a question on the chat about what's the ideal number, and we'll come to that a little bit later. But one of the questions is, from a perspective, is the team dynamics. Greg, you talked about you have a number of people. You're in a car for an awful long time, up to a maximum of 46 hours, plus the drive back down to Jindy, plus the drive down the coast to get there to start with, and or the drive home. What are some of the other tips, suggestions, or things to look out for, or what makes great team dynamics, Greg, from your perspective?
Yeah, I think I might have sort of mentioned it before, but you might not know your team that well, but you've chosen them for a reason, so you've got to back them. In any given group, as we all know, there's going to be, a natural leader. There's going to be, someone who thinks they're the leader but might not be. And there's going to be, a doer and a helper and maybe a follower and maybe a quiet one. So I think maybe trying to figure out those roles on the way down to Eden in the car, if you have the opportunity, is probably a good opportunity to try and sort that out. And maybe, sometimes if you have a role allocated to you, that might suit you perfectly. So go with it. If that role doesn't suit you, you're going to have to speak up, and you're going to have to say, "Sorry, I'm not comfortable with this. Can we rearrange something? Can we adjust something?" So being adaptable, being dynamic, and being honest, I think, is the key. You might have a crew that's, crewed every Coast to Kosci for the last 9, or more. But they still might have, an issue with each other, and they still might have to, have those tough conversations and be adaptable and go through that process as well. So checking in on each other, asking each other if they're okay, you know, being kind to each other, supporting each other and supporting the runner. I think that's the key.
Thanks, Greg. And Amanda, how important is patience and is good spirits?
Very important. Both qualities that I'm not great at. Yeah, I agree with a lot of what Greg was saying. So at the end of the day, and this is obviously just how I work, not just necessarily at Coast To Kosci, across other events. If I'm crew chief or whoever is crew chief, they're the boss. So they're the ones that ultimately, if we're having to make a decision, are the ones that need to make the decision. Like, you know, they need to be open and listen to other people in the team. But at the end of the day, they're the ones that are in charge. And I think that sometimes that's really important, because otherwise it can become a bit like too many like cooks, you know, like it becomes a bit messy. So that's like, you know, that's just like how we run. So in saying that, we always joke that I'm the one that should really get to veto who makes it into the team and who doesn't, because I'm the one that's going to have to spend the most time with them. Matt hardly spends any time with anyone really in the scheme of life, yet we're all stuck in a car together for however many hours it's going to take to run that. So I think, you know, like, it's really important to, like, you know, even if you're coming together for the first time, and, you know, I've crewed with people that I hardly have ever known, family members to runners that I've met, like, you know, a couple of times beforehand. But it's important, I think, that, you know, we always have someone's there in charge of something. So for Coast To Kosci, we've got someone who's in charge of nutrition. Like, obviously they do other roles as well, but their main job is looking after nutrition. So they're the one person to go to whenever anyone has any questions about where things are up to. We have someone who's like a vibes manager and a driver. So their job is to make sure that everyone is in good spirits, and, you know, that suits them to an absolute T. We have like a head pacer. So they're kind of like, you know, supporting the other pacers, making sure those other pacers are okay. Like, you know, it's like finding out what those strengths are of those person and what maybe skills they have, and being able to tailor a role to them is really important, I think. And it's kind of like I suppose it's touching on team dynamics and as well. But, you know, it's really important that you find some time to maybe have a break as well. And I'm not saying to, like, you know, have a sleep for 4 hours and catch up later or anything like that. But, you know, we've had times where we've pulled to the side of the road and we're waiting for the runner to come through, and one of the guys has gone, I'm just going to go for a walk up this hill, because sometimes you just need a bit of space away from each other as well. Like, and, you know, because how often do you really spend, you know, 30, you know, 28 to 30 plus hours with the same group of people all the time? And so there is times when, you know, people might start to rub on each other's nerves a little bit, and like, that's okay. And it obviously comes back to, you know, having that high level of patience, but realizing what you're there for as well. And sometimes, you know, the bravest thing you can do in that moment is just take a step back and go, I just need to have a break. I need to regather my thoughts. You know, I just need to have a moment to myself, get some caffeine into me, or just, like, you know, watch, like, you know, the sheep walk across the paddock. You know, it's really beautiful where we are. So there's many opportunities to have a nice moment of mindfulness in the countryside, and to kind of take that, because that's going to mean that you're going to come back and be able to support your runner a lot stronger as well.
And if it's raining, you get a chance to listen to all the frogs.
Yes.
Nikki.
Amanda, staying with you for a second, and somebody's, Ania, I think her name is, has posted a simple question in the chat. Probably doesn't warrant a simple answer, but what's the ideal number of support crew to have?
There is no simple answer to that. I think it's what works for you. I've seen people do this with really small numbers, like only a couple. And I think personally that's crazy, but good on them for being able to do that. I've also seen people have like an absolute busload of people, and I think that's crazy. I think everyone needs to have a certain role within there. And it's so hard because you want to invite everyone. Last year, I believe, and he'll possibly be like rolling his eyes at me as I say this, but I believe that Matt had too many within his team. Like, he had people there that I think he just didn't want to say no to. And it's hard to say no because, you know, this is such an amazing event and you want people to be involved and people want to be involved and help you. But I think it's actually really important for you to look after yourself as the crew and also as the runner to not have too many people, because too many people becomes too hard. So, you know, like obviously, you know, like it's up to you on how many people you want. But ideally, I would say, you know, like you're looking at a crew chief. You know, we have someone whose main job it is for driving, and so we just kind of use that as a big safety kind of thing. You know, they're focused on that, and so then they don't have to tire themselves out with running, you know, a couple of paces. You know, we're talking about like, you know, a carload of people at the end of the day, and you need like a lot of gear as well. So, you know, you don't want to be like all cramped in, like, and making the whole vibes uncomfortable. So I would say that as long as everyone has a particular role and that role is essential for you getting to the top of Kosciuszko and then back down to Charlotte's Pass, that's the number that you need.
As you said, not a simple answer.
Sorry.
Greg, anything you want to elaborate on that?
Look, I agree. It's up to the individual runner and what works for them. In the past, I've seen things not work. One person to support you doesn't work. We know that. There's some mandatory requirements, obviously, for safety, and so they need to be followed. So, and you know, as Amanda said, having those designated roles, depending on what they are, and how that crew works, will be really important. I've had success in the past with 3 crew and 1 runner in a regular size car. But you know, that can vary. So look, as long as everyone knows their role, and everyone's committed to, you know, getting that person to the top of the hill, and back down again in most cases, hopefully this year as well, you know, that'll help. So you guys need to work that out yourselves.
It's probably just a suggestion around that too, is with the number of people is, as a race director, you see this as well, where the first day, everyone's up, everyone wants to do everything, but the support crew need to last up to 46 hours. And the average race time is probably around sort of 36 hours. Most people sort of, but if you look at the bell curve. So that means when the energy levels drop later in the day, you've still got to have people who can make smart decisions, be relatively fresh, so that ability to manage energy across your support crew for that period of time is really important. And I have seen examples, I may have experienced it as well, where everyone was pretty good for most of the first day, and then, hang on, where's the support crew when I need them at night? Because everyone's struggling because the energy just dropped because they've been on such a high all that first day with the excitement. Just something else to think about. There is a question in the chatter as well. Is it okay for a support crew member to leave and come back a few hours later? Well, yes, that is, but we want that occurring at checkpoints. Another part of the question is, while other crews stay and supports and someone having day and night crew, well, that's okay for day and night crew, but they can only change over at designated checkpoints. And we need to be aware of who is in the crew. And we say that because we need that for insurance. Because there are no roads closed and we are on public roads, we need to know who is effectively on course for insurance and for the authorities. Mickey, any other, probably last points before we either get any additional questions or a little bit of open Q&A?
I think we can just go to open Q&A, Greg. I mean, I think we've asked it before, but any other tips, Amanda, Greg, that you would offer to first-time support crews?
I've got a couple of random practical kind of ones that I wrote down. So some of the stuff that I like, and this is obviously just works for me, more me, it's more about me within the crewing kind of stuff, but also my runner, is that we pack all the mandatory gear for our runner, Matt, in a waterproof bag that has everything in it, and we never open or touch that bag until we have to open it up at Charlotte's Pass. That way we're not at Charlotte's Pass trying to grab everything and put it all together. It's all there ready to go. It makes it more streamlined and easier and way less stressful. So that's one thing. I also think that one of the other things, it kind of comes back to organization, which is hilarious, is that we pack our own food for us. So like, you know, I think one of the things that I really think is important is the crew looking after the crew. So, and especially in regards to like, food and hydration. So we pack all of that stuff separate to Matt's stuff, so that way, one, nothing ever gets mixed up, but two, that makes sure that we've got stuff as well to be able to eat and drink. Like, it's a really long time that we're out there. You're not necessarily coming across huge amounts of stores where you can buy like stuff like, yes, Cathcart's amazing and it's great for ice blocks. Definitely recommend going in there, especially if it's a hot day, and getting your runner an ice block. Definitely worth it. But like, it's about making sure that that your stuff is there and you're able to get access to it, because the last thing you want to do is to start to go in their supply. Heaven forbid, I crack open the chalky milk, or for Coast To Kosci, the beer that we have a shoey in at the end, and have that throughout the race. Like, it's about keeping the supplies quite differently. So yeah, I think like those are two like little practical kind of things that I think, but and I mentioned it before, but just ask for help. Please don't ever just be in your car, especially for a first-time crew, thinking, I don't know how to handle this situation, or I don't have something and I wish I had it, because there's a good chance that someone out there has that and can lend that to you throughout the race. We pack so much stuff that never gets open, never gets often looked at, and you might need it, and would be more than happy to kind of give that up for someone.
And Greg, thanks for that, Amanda. And I mean, being like that doesn't take away from the competitive nature of the race as well. Support crews helping out support crews. No way does it. It just kind of like keeps that community spirit really, really strong.
100%. It doesn't take away from the competitiveness whatsoever. And our team is very much about the vibes. And so we have music playing, we're like dancing, like we're encouraging the other runners as they come past. Like, we actually want everyone to make it to the finish line. And if we can help someone out in doing that who's not our runner, that's just as great and rewarding as getting our runner to the finish line as well. Like, my hope is that everyone makes it to the line. I actually don't like it when people DNF from this event, because I feel like they got to cut that journey short for them. And so like, if there's anything that you can do, it's not about like that whole, I need to make sure my runner gets there first. Like, it's just about getting there all together.
Yeah, I agree, Amanda, with that. But also, yeah, you got to keep it light as a support crew. You got to encourage them when they need it. You've also got to be calm, at times as well, and not overstimulate them, and just support them. I think trying to gauge, what they might need and have it ready and be ahead of that is a really good point. And try not to offer them too many choices all the time. Decision fatigue is real, and as a runner, so maybe having one or two choices at any given time, and vary those up in terms of nutrition, fluid intake, all that sort of stuff, what nappy you might provide them to wear. And a really, really important point, on the Dalgety Plain, late at night, early in the morning, reassure the runner that the hallucinations are real and that they need to run faster to get through the night quicker, to get away from them. Okay? You need to support them in that. It's a really important strategy that everyone must employ.
And you said that with a straight face, eh?
But I've had those hallucinations, and I wish my Irish pacer had encouraged that as well. Just a couple other questions to address. What's phone reception like for the course? All right, so you'll have seen in the rules we strongly recommend Telstra, not because we necessarily love Telstra, but coverage is better, has been found to be better with Telstra. Coverage is patchy. You'll have coverage for probably around, I think, to about Jingo Creek, which by memory is around sort of the 40K
45.
or so, 40K so mark. Then it'll start getting a bit patchy, and you get pieces where it's okay. Then you'll struggle a bit until you get close to Cathcart, and you'll get good coverage. From then there'll be patchy intermittent pieces through to around Gunning Rack, sort of at 100, 106K. Then there'll be patches between there and Dalgety where there isn't any. And you might get lucky with some pieces. Once you're past Dalgety, by memory, it starts to get pretty good until as you get close to Jindabyne, you're pretty well right. So just bear in mind, you also have to deal with that. So again, that's some advice.
And Greg, just adding to that, Telstra is they're significantly better than any other provider.
Thanks, Vicky. I used to work with them for a long time. I was trying not to go too hard, but it is substantially better. We strongly recommend that. When you say reach out to other crews, what does that look like? For those first timers, you see, as you're all leapfrogging your runners, you get to see the same sort of crews. You'll see some crews a little bit more often, then you see them and might see them a little bit less, and that's because your runners are separating or getting closer together. Just have conversations. As you've moved ahead, and I stress at 40 kilometers an hour for that 5Ks, which doesn't take too long, you're there waiting for whatever it is, 20, 30, 40 minutes plus for your runner to come through. It's a long time to get to know another crew. So you have plenty of time for dialogue. So do reach out. Similarly, we do have the crew chief's WhatsApp group. If something is a bit more important, that is an option as well, if it is material. And the example will be, while we have officials that are on night shift and will respond to like a flat battery, if they are, for example, further away and a crew is quite close, there will be an instance where another crew might jump in and go, well, actually, I'm only just up the road. I'll go and help them restart their vehicle. So it's important, though, that we don't have excessive chatter. We just have smart chatter when help is really needed.
No. Any more questions, comments? I think we're going to leave it there then, guys, and just one final huge thanks go to both our friend Craig Thomson and our friend Amanda Pilley. Thanks, guys. Got your expertise and experiences that you've just kind of imparted and shared with us there is invaluable, second to none. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having us, guys. Pleasure. Looking forward to seeing everyone very, very soon.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And look, we will post details out about the webinar. We try not to just throw it straight out there. Will come out as well as the second webinar. So again, any other questions, do reach out to us through the race director email address. And again, we, as Amanda had said, we're all there to help each other. We do celebrate the success of everybody who finishes. Mick and I really don't like DNFs. We want you to finish, but that's required. Is your own steam is required for that, and good support people is required for that, and good preparation for that. So again, reach out if you do have any separate questions. Otherwise, I think, Mickey, we look forward to seeing everybody on the beach or actually in Eden the day before, which is exactly a month away.
Brilliant. Thanks, everyone. Thanks again, Greg. Thanks again, Amanda. Cheers.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.